If there was one thing that followers of contemporary Christian music probably could have felt assured would never show up on their gospel music bingo card, it would be that Russ Taff would never be found covering a song by the group The National. And if there was anything they could be assured of beyond that, it might be that Taff would not end up singing a national song called Demons. Yet here we are, with these unforeseen, imaginary scenarios now having to come to pass on Taff's latest album, Cover Story, which consists entirely of the CCM star covering secular material by artists from Paul Simon to Duran Duran, and in a raw, almost bluesy, fairly down and dirty style. To boot, Cover Story came about at the instigation of executive producer Steve Taylor, another artist who came to stardom in the Christian rock world of the 1980s, albeit following a very different artistic path. Taylor was the alternative rock gadfly of that scene in that era, whereas Taff was known for a more earnest approach, coming out of the vocal group The Imperials into solo stardom, and highly regarded then and since for his belting abilities. For anyone who remembers their respective points of origin, tonally, it may still feel like an unlikely match. But Taylor, who has focused less on being a recording artist himself and more on being a producer since he struck gold producing Sixpence, None the Richer, had a vision for how Taff could reinvent himself just a little with a late career record that could be the equivalent of where Rick Rubin steered Johnny Cash. The resulting record features Taff's beautiful and reasonably raw covers of tunes by Prince, Bill Withers, U2, and Depeche Mode. For starters, all played for grit, not gloss. Earthiness becomes Taff, who has surprised and captivated his fan base in the last few years by releasing a candid memoir and then talking about his long-hidden dark side in places like the Soft White Underbelly video interview series. The child of an abusive and alcoholic Pentecostal preacher dad, Taff eventually fell into alcoholism himself, unable to cope with the shame lingering from his traumatic childhood. His journey out of that and commitment to being real and discussing it makes for a contrast with the Michael Tate scandal now running through the Christian music world, as evidence that, yes, even Christian music stars can confront and confess their demons before public duress demands it. Taff and Taylor will both be performing Saturday night just outside of Nashville in Columbia, Tennessee, at the Mule House, a house of blues-style hall that has become renowned as one of the best venues in the South. The evening is a celebration of Taff's Cover Story album, with Taylor being joined as the opening act by his former band Chagall Guevara, an all-star group that recorded for MCA in the early 90s and has only rarely reunited since. Since Taff showing up to sing at Chagall's last reunion gig led to the idea for Cover Story, the double bill feels natural. The two collaborators got together on Zoom this week to share with Variety what this first-time matchup means to them. How did this collaboration first come about? Taylor, 3 years ago, my old band, Chagall Guevara, did a reunion show at the Ryman. Prior to that, we hadn't played together in 30 years, and we haven't played since. But at that time we did one of those things where people who were willing to pay a ridiculous amount for tickets to our Ryman show would also go to an after-party the next night at Jack White's club in Nashville, the Blue Room. We promised we would have some special guests join us that night for a jam, and we invited Russ. And, Russ, you might want to plug your ears for this part. I hadn't heard Russ for a long time, and he was always one of my favorite singers, but I just assumed people get to a certain age and they don't necessarily keep their chops. We were going to have Charlie Peacock join us that night to sing Down on the Lowlands, off that self-titled album that he did in the late 80s, but Charlie got sick and couldn't come. So Russ did it impromptu, and it was a mind-blowing performance. He brought the house down and took us all to church. I'm not Pentecostal, but I believe I was waving my hands at one point. It was a spectacular thing, and clearly Russ still had it.